Every morning, we wake up to the same choice that has faced humanity for over 2,000 years. We can stumble blindly into our day, reactive and scattered, or we can rise with the deliberate intention of a philosopher who understands that how we begin determines how we become. The ancient masters knew something we've forgotten in our age of constant distraction, that the first hour of consciousness shapes the entire architecture of our character. Before you check your phone, before the world demands your attention, before the chaos of modern life pulls you in 1,000 directions, there exists a sacred space. It's the space between sleep and surrender, between rest and reaction. This is where warriors are made, not on battlefields, but in the quiet moments when no one is watching and everything is possible. If you're ready to transform not just your mornings, but your entire approach to living, then stay with me. What I'm about to share isn't theory. It's a blueprint forged in the crucible of human experience, tested by emperors and slaves alike, refined across centuries of triumph and suffering. The Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius didn't become the most powerful man in the world by accident. Before dawn broke over the eternal city, while his subjects slept, he was already at work, not on matters of state, but on matters of the soul. His private journal, what we now call the Meditations, reveals the daily practices that built an unshakable character. These weren't the habits of a man born to greatness, they were the habits that created greatness. We live in an age that worships productivity hacks and morning routines, yet we've lost sight of what the ancients understood intuitively. That true strength comes not from optimizing our external circumstances, but from mastering our internal landscape. The Stoics didn't wake up to conquer their to-do lists. They woke up to conquer themselves. Consider this. Every morning, you're handed 24 hours of possibility. Most people treat this gift carelessly, letting their days unfold according to the whims of circumstance, the demands of others, the pull of impulse. But what if, instead, you approached each dawn like a philosopher approaching truth, with reverence, preparation, and unwavering commitment to excellence? The habits I'm about to reveal aren't about becoming more productive, though productivity will follow. They aren't about achieving more, though achievement will come. They're about something far more fundamental. They're about becoming the kind of person who can face any challenge, weather any storm, and maintain their center when everything around them falls apart. Seneca, the great Roman philosopher who advised emperors and accumulated vast wealth yet never lost sight of wisdom's true value, wrote these words that should chill us to our core. It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it. Every morning we waste is a morning we can never reclaim. Every day we begin without intention is a day we drift further from our potential. But here's what most people miss when they read about ancient philosophy. These weren't abstract ideas debated in marble halls. These were practical tools used by real people facing real problems. Marcus Aurelius used these principles while managing a plague that killed millions. Epictetus developed them while enduring slavery. Seneca applied them while navigating the treacherous politics of Nero's Rome. The first habit that separates philosophers from the masses begins before your feet touch the floor. It's a practice so simple that most people dismiss it, yet so powerful that it can reshape your entire relationship with existence. Are you ready to discover what it means to begin each day not as a victim of circumstance, but as an architect of destiny? The moment consciousness returns, before the mind can construct its familiar prison of worries and obligations, we have our first opportunity for philosophical mastery. This is the practice of morning reflection, not meditation in the way most people understand it, but something far more active and transformative. Marcus Aurelius called it the discipline of desire, the daily work of examining what we truly want versus what we think we should want. Before the world tells us who to be, we must remember who we chose to become. This isn't about positive thinking or gratitude journaling, though gratitude may arise. It's about confronting reality with such clarity that illusion becomes impossible. Begin by asking yourself 3 questions that cut through every form of self-deception. First, what can I control today? Not what I hope to influence, not what I wish were different, but what lies genuinely within my power. The Stoics understood that suffering comes not from what happens to us, but from our resistance to accepting the boundaries of our influence. Epictetus, who knew the pain of physical bondage, taught that true freedom begins with this recognition. Some things are within our power, while others are not. This isn't pessimism, it's liberation. When we stop wasting energy on what we cannot control, we discover the immense power we actually possess. The second question strikes even deeper. Who am I choosing to be today? Not who others expect, not who you were yesterday, not who you hope to become someday, but who you're actively choosing to embody in the next 24 hours. Character isn't something you have, it's something you do, moment by moment, choice by choice. Seneca wrote, "Every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end." Each morning is a death and a birth, the death of yesterday's version of yourself and the birth of today's possibility. This isn't metaphorical poetry, it's literal truth. The person you were when you went to sleep is gone forever. The question is, who will take their place? The third question completes the foundation. What would courage look like today? Not the Hollywood version of courage that requires dramatic circumstances, but the quiet courage that shows up in ordinary moments. The courage to speak truth when silence would be easier. The courage to do what's right when no one is watching. The courage to remain calm when everyone else chooses chaos. This morning reflection shouldn't take long, 5 to 10 minutes at most. But those minutes set a trajectory that compound throughout the day. You're not trying to solve every problem or plan every detail. You're establishing your philosophical stance, your relationship with reality, your commitment to virtue over comfort. The second habit builds on this foundation and addresses one of modern life's greatest threats to inner peace: the tyranny of external validation. Before we check our phones, before we scroll through feeds designed to hijack our attention, before we allow the world's chaos to flood our consciousness, we must establish our own center. The ancient Stoics had a practice they called morning pages, though they didn't use that term. They would write, privately and without audience, about their intentions, their principles, and their commitment to wisdom. This wasn't journaling as we understand it today, full of emotions and experiences. This was philosophical preparation for psychological warfare. Because make no mistake, every day is a battle. Not against external enemies, though those may exist, but against the internal forces that would drag us away from our highest selves. Distraction, fear, anger, envy, pride. These are the opponents that show up every single day, and they're most dangerous in the moments when we're unprepared. The third habit might surprise you because it seems to contradict our modern obsession with positive thinking. It's called negative visualization, and it's perhaps the most misunderstood practice in all of Stoic philosophy. This isn't about becoming pessimistic or expecting the worst. It's about building psychological resilience by imagining, briefly and deliberately, how you would maintain your virtue if things went wrong. What if today brought unexpected loss? What if someone you trusted betrayed that trust? What if your health failed, your plans collapsed, your security disappeared? The untrained mind recoils from such thoughts, but the philosophical mind engages with them systematically. Not to invite suffering, but to remove its power to surprise and overwhelm us. Seneca practiced this regularly, sometimes living for days as if he were poor, eating simple food and wearing plain clothes, not out of masochism but out of wisdom. Set aside a certain number of days, during which you shall be content with the scantiest and cheapest fare, with coarse and rough dress, saying to yourself the while, "Is this the condition that I feared?" When we've mentally rehearsed difficulty, we discover something remarkable. We're stronger than we imagined, more resilient than we believed, more capable than our fears suggested. The things we spend so much energy trying to avoid lose their terror when we realize we could handle them with grace. But here's the crucial point that most people miss. This practice isn't about expecting the worst or living in fear. It's about discovering that your peace of mind doesn't depend on everything going perfectly. It's about recognizing that your character is independent of your circumstances. Are you beginning to see how these habits work together? Morning reflection establishes your philosophical foundation. Private writing strengthens your commitment to that foundation. Negative visualization tests that foundation against reality. Each practice prepares you for the next, building a structure of inner strength that external circumstances cannot shake. The fourth habit addresses something that destroys more potential than any external enemy ever could: the internal dialogue we have with ourselves throughout the day. The Stoics understood that we are constantly talking to ourselves, interpreting events, creating stories about what things mean. The question is whether we're consciously directing this conversation or letting it run wild. Most people are passive observers of their own thoughts, carried along by whatever mental current happens to be strongest. But philosophers take active control of their internal narrative. They don't just think, they think about their thinking. They don't just react, they choose their reactions based on their principles rather than their impulses. This begins each morning with what Marcus Aurelius called the discipline of assent, the practice of examining our automatic interpretations and choosing more accurate, more useful ways of understanding what happens to us. When something frustrates us, we pause and ask, is this frustration based on reality or on our expectations? When something disappoints us, we examine whether the disappointment comes from what actually happened, or from stories we told ourselves about what should have happened. Epictetus taught his students that we are disturbed not by things themselves, but by our judgments about things. This isn't philosophical wordplay, it's practical psychology. The same event that devastates one person can inspire another, not because the event is different, but because their interpretations are different. The fifth habit builds on this foundation by establishing what we might call philosophical checkpoints throughout the day. These aren't formal meditation sessions, but brief moments of conscious reflection that keep us aligned with our values when life threatens to knock us off course. Set 3 times during your day, perhaps mid-morning, after lunch, and before evening, when you pause and ask yourself a simple question. Am I acting in accordance with my principles right now, or am I being reactive? This isn't about judgment or self-criticism. It's about conscious course correction, the way a skilled sailor constantly adjusts their heading to account for changing winds and currents. The ancient Stoics lived in a world without constant connectivity, but they understood something that's even more relevant today. Attention is our most precious resource, and protecting it is a matter of philosophical survival. Every moment we spend focused on what we cannot control is a moment stolen from what we can control. Every minute we spend in reactive mode is a minute we're not spending in creative mode. The sixth habit might be the most challenging for modern practitioners because it requires us to swim against the current of contemporary culture. It's the practice of voluntary discomfort, deliberately choosing difficulty when ease is available, not out of masochism but out of wisdom. This doesn't mean seeking suffering for its own sake. It means occasionally choosing the harder path when both options are available, to maintain our capacity for resilience. It means sometimes saying no to comfort when yes would be easier. It means training ourselves to find satisfaction in simple things so that we're not dependent on luxury for happiness. Seneca would sometimes sleep on the floor, eat plain bread, drink water instead of wine, not as punishment, but as preparation. Set aside a certain number of days during which you shall be content with the scantiest and cheapest fare, with coarse and rough dress, saying to yourself the while, "Is this the condition that I feared?" Modern life offers us infinite opportunities for this kind of training. Take the stairs instead of the elevator. Walk instead of driving when both options exist. Choose discomfort occasionally to maintain your relationship with it. The goal isn't to make life unnecessarily difficult. It's to ensure that when difficulty comes involuntarily, we're prepared. The seventh habit addresses one of the most overlooked aspects of philosophical development, our relationship with time itself. Most people live as if they have infinite time, wasting hours on activities that neither bring joy nor serve any meaningful purpose. But philosophers live with what the Stoics called memento mori, the remembrance of death. This isn't morbid preoccupation with mortality. It's the recognition that our time is finite and therefore precious beyond measure. Every day we waste is gone forever. Every moment we spend on trivial matters is a moment we can never reclaim for what truly matters. Each morning, spend a moment acknowledging the simple, devastating truth: this day will never come again. The conversations you have today, the choices you make today, the character you display today, all of it is unique and irreplaceable. You cannot live this day again, cannot make these choices again, cannot have these opportunities again. But here's what transforms this recognition from depressing to liberating. When we truly understand the preciousness of time, we stop wasting it on things that don't matter. We stop procrastinating on important conversations. We stop delaying meaningful work. We stop taking relationships for granted. The eighth habit flows naturally from this recognition of time's value, the practice of evening review. Just as we begin each day with intentional reflection, we should end it with honest assessment. Not self-flagellation for mistakes made, but clear-eyed evaluation of lessons learned. Ask yourself 3 questions before sleep. What did I do well today? What could I have done better? What did I learn about myself, about others, about the nature of reality? This isn't about perfection, it's about progression. It's about becoming slightly wiser each day, slightly more aligned with our values, slightly more skilled at the art of living well. Marcus Aurelius did this so consistently that his private journal became one of history's greatest philosophical works. He wasn't writing for publication. He was writing for clarity, for accountability, for growth. His evening reflections shaped his morning intentions, creating a cycle of continuous philosophical development. The 9th habit addresses something that modern life makes increasingly difficult: the cultivation of deep focus. In an age of constant interruption, the ability to concentrate fully on one thing at a time isn't just productivity skill, it's a form of spiritual practice. Choose one task each day, preferably in the morning when your mental energy is highest, and give it your complete, undivided attention. No multitasking, no background distractions, no mental wandering to other concerns. Just you and the task at hand, engaged with the kind of focus that transforms work into meditation. This practice teaches you something invaluable. You have far more control over your attention than you realize. The scattered, distracted state that feels normal isn't inevitable. It's chosen, often unconsciously, but chosen nonetheless. When you practice concentrated attention regularly, you discover that focus is a skill that can be developed, strengthened, and deployed at will. The 10th and final habit brings everything together in a practice that might seem simple but contains the essence of all philosophical wisdom: the commitment to daily improvement. not in dramatic leaps but in small, consistent steps that compound over time. The Stoics understood something that modern self-help culture often misses. Sustainable change doesn't come from grand gestures or massive transformations. It comes from doing slightly better today than you did yesterday, consistently, without exception, regardless of how you feel or what circumstances arise. This is what Seneca meant when he wrote, "Make progress, and, before all else, endeavor to be consistent with yourself." Not perfect, not revolutionary, consistent. The person who improves by 1% each day will be 37 times better after 1 year. The person who gets 1% worse each day will decline to nearly zero. But here's what most people get wrong about this principle. They focus on the external metrics, how much they accomplish, how others perceive them, what results they achieve. Philosophical improvement is different. It's measured not in external outcomes but in internal alignment. Did you act according to your principles today? Did you choose courage over comfort when the moment demanded it? Did you respond rather than react when challenged? These questions matter more than any external measure of success because they determine who you become, and who you become determines everything else. Character is the foundation upon which all other achievements rest. Without it, success is hollow. With it, even failure becomes a form of victory. The morning habits we've discussed aren't separate practices. They're components of a unified approach to living that the Stoics called the discipline of action. Everything we do, from the moment we wake up to the moment we sleep, is an opportunity to practice philosophy, to embody our values, to strengthen our character. When you reflect each morning on what you can control, you're preparing for the inevitable moments when life tests your understanding of that principle. When you practice negative visualization, you're building the resilience you'll need when difficulty actually arrives. When you choose discomfort occasionally, you're training for the times when discomfort chooses you. This is why the ancient philosophers weren't just thinking about ideas, they were training for life itself. They understood that philosophy isn't an academic exercise but a practical art, the art of living well regardless of circumstances. But let's address the question that might be forming in your mind. Can these ancient practices really work in our modern world? The answer isn't just yes, it's that they're more necessary now than ever before. We live in an age of unprecedented distraction, unprecedented comfort, unprecedented ease. These conditions make philosophical training not less relevant but more urgent. The Emperor Marcus Aurelius faced plagues, wars, political intrigue, and the crushing responsibility of governing an empire. Yet he found time each morning and evening for the philosophical practices that kept him centered. If he could maintain these habits while carrying the weight of the Roman world, what excuse do we have? The slave Epictetus developed these same practices while enduring conditions that would break most people's spirits. His teachings reached us not despite his circumstances but because of how he used those circumstances to forge unshakable wisdom. If he could find freedom in the midst of bondage, we can find it in the midst of our far more comfortable challenges. The wealthy advisor Seneca proved that these principles work regardless of external circumstances. Rich or poor, powerful or powerless, healthy or sick, the fundamental challenge remains the same. How do we maintain our integrity, our courage, our commitment to what matters most when everything around us conspires to pull us away from those values? The habits we've explored today aren't just morning routines. They're the foundation of a life worth living. They're the difference between drifting through your days reactively and navigating them with intention. They're the difference between being shaped by circumstances and shaping circumstances through the force of your character. Start with just one. Choose the habit that resonates most strongly with you, the one that feels both challenging and achievable. Practice it consistently for 30 days. Notice what changes, not just in your external experience, but in your internal landscape. Notice how you feel when faced with difficulty, how you respond to frustration, how you handle uncertainty. Then, when that first habit has become natural, add another. Build slowly, consistently, with the patience that comes from understanding that true change is a process, not an event. The Stoics called this the long path, not because it's difficult, but because it's lifelong. There's no graduation from the school of character, no moment when you can stop growing, stop learning, stop becoming better than you were yesterday. Remember this: every morning, you wake up with the opportunity to begin again. Not to erase the past or guarantee the future, but to choose who you'll be today. The habits we've discussed give you the tools to make that choice consciously, deliberately, in alignment with your deepest values. The ancient philosophers didn't promise that life would be easy if you followed their teachings. They promised something far more valuable: that you would be equal to whatever life brings, that you would maintain your center in any storm, that you would discover a form of strength that no external circumstance can touch. This is the invitation that greets you every dawn: to rise not just from sleep, but into the fullness of your potential. To begin each day not as a victim of circumstance, but as an architect of character. To live not in reaction to what happens, but in alignment with what matters most. The choice, as it has always been, is yours. But now you have the tools to make that choice wisely. The question isn't whether you're capable of philosophical excellence. The question is whether you're willing to do the daily work of becoming worthy of it. If you found value in these insights, subscribe to join others who are committed to the path of philosophical growth. Share this with someone who might benefit from these ancient tools for modern challenges. And remember, philosophy isn't something you think about, it's something you live. Starting tomorrow morning, with your very first conscious breath, you have the opportunity to begin that life. The philosophers are waiting for you to join their ranks. Not in some distant future when you've solved all your problems, but right now, with all your imperfections and challenges intact. Because that's where philosophy begins, not with perfection, but with the commitment to grow, one day, one choice, one moment at a time.